I walked away from my husband after he splashed red wine in my face for glancing at another man. Okay, you guys, I have a story for you. A story about how, in the same week, I drove 4 hours to my sister's house and filed for divorce. But what if I told you the moment my entire life shattered? The moment I knew I had to leave began with a single, innocent glance at a chip bowl and ended with a full glass of red wine in my face. It was a co-worker's birthday party, just a normal Friday night. I was chatting with someone new at the snack table, grabbing some chips. My husband's friend walked over to grab one too, and naturally I looked up. Maybe 3 seconds. No flirtation, no smile, just a fleeting glance. But my husband, from across the room, saw it. I saw him walking towards me, a glass of red wine in his hand, a chilling silence in his stride. Before I could even process what was happening, he threw it. The wine, cold and staining, hit my face, my eyes, my nose, drenching my pristine white blouse. It burned. And then his voice, cutting through the stunned silence of the room. That's what she gets for looking at other men. The world stopped. No one moved. No one spoke. The friend I'd apparently flirted with stared at the ground, willing himself to disappear. The woman I was talking to, bless her, handed me a napkin, her eyes wide with a mix of pity and fear, and then she just walked away, avoided me. My husband, his grip like iron, yanked my arm. We're leaving, he hissed. Confused, burning, and humiliated, I just followed. Wine still dripped from my face, burning my eyes as we walked out. In the car on the way home, he told me I'd embarrassed him, that I'd flirted with his friend in public. When I tried to explain, to tell him it was just a glance, he cut me off. Enough, he said. You should know better. You should know better. That phrase, it echoed in my mind. It was his signature, really. A chilling reminder of every time he'd punished me for what he deemed minor offenses. And I, like a fool, had rationalized them away, forgot them, pretended they weren't so bad. The time in our first year of marriage when he got furious because I laughed too long at another man's joke. No one threw anything then, but he gave me the silent treatment for 4 days until I apologized for disrespecting him. The third year, when he said I dressed too nicely for work and demanded to know who I was trying to impress, I started wearing baggy clothes, anything to avoid the inevitable storm. The fourth year, he checked my phone while I slept, found a text from a male co-worker about a project deadline, and went silent for a week. Even after I showed him the whole conversation, proving it was innocent. Miscommunication, I'd tell myself. He loves me too much, he's just jealous. I thought being more mindful of my behavior around men would fix it, but seeing that wine arc through the air, feeling it splash across my face in front of dozens of people, that wasn't miscommunication. That was intentional. That was abuse. And suddenly I saw it all. Every single incident. It was all abuse. Back at home, I went to the bathroom to wash the wine off. He followed, watching me from the doorway. He apologized, yes, but then he added, "You made me. If you just knew how others saw you, how much I cared about your actions." It wasn't an apology. Not really. The mirror, fogged with steam and wine, showed me what I hadn't seen in 5 years. He wasn't sorry. He was justifying. He didn't love me. He ruled me. He didn't want to teach me respect. He wanted me to fear him. And in that moment, I understood. With a hollow heart, I promised to improve. He hugged me from behind, that knowing smile on his face, convinced I would let him believe everything was fine. And I did. I let him believe it. Monday morning, he left for work at 8:30, just like always. The second his car pulled out, I called in sick. Then I packed 3 suitcases, clothes, important documents, my grandmother's jewelry. That was it. I left everything else, all 5 years of our life, and I drove, for hours straight, to my sister's place. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask a single question. She just made me tea and said I could stay as long as I needed. That night, my phone started ringing. It was him. Checking in, he probably thought. I stayed silent. 15 calls later, the texts began. Worried, angry, threatening. apologetic, desperate. It was a cycle I knew too well. After 4 rounds, I blocked his number. My sister, practical and fierce, suggested a domestic dispute lawyer. The next week, divorce papers were filed. He, of course, disagreed. I woke up Tuesday on my sister's couch, the faint, sticky, sour smell of dried wine still in my hair. My neck ached. My phone was face down on the coffee table. 42 missed calls. All from him, or from numbers I didn't recognize, borrowed phones, company lines. He was relentless. I deleted the notifications without checking the voicemails. In the background, I heard my sister moving in the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling, cabinets opening and closing. My body felt like water, but my mind was clearer than it had been since the party. I had left my husband, my life, our home, everything. There was no going back. My sister brought me a mug of coffee, no judgment in her eyes despite my disheveled state. She pulled out a notebook and a pen. "Let's make a list," she said gently. My hands shook too much to write, so she took the pen from me and started. The list started with the lawyer, then bank accounts, address changes, house documents. It expanded to 2 pages. Each item felt impossible, like scaling a mountain. My life, reduced to 3 suitcases. My grandmother's jewelry, the only thing I'd consciously taken. The forgotten wedding albums, my favorite books, the Christmas blanket for my sister. All still in his house. Morgan Hale, my lawyer, called after I told her what I'd left behind. She suggested a police escort once the restraining order was served to retrieve more belongings. But we had to wait. So I slept under a borrowed blanket, wearing the same 6 shirts, while my things were held hostage in a house I couldn't return to. Monday morning, Morgan Hale called again. His lawyer had responded. Dylan Pierce. He was protesting the divorce. And get this, he expected me to pay half the legal fees because I had abandoned the marriage without cause. Morgan, reading parts of that letter to me over the phone, made me sick. Abandoned without explanation. Like 5 years of controlling behavior and a face full of wine wasn't explanation enough. Like I'd just woken up one day and decided to end our marriage without warning. Morgan's voice was firm. This is a common intimidation tactic. His claims will fail in court, but it will take longer and cost more. Without his cooperation. 7 more months, she estimated. Thousands more in legal fees. The weight crushed me. 7 more months of court dates, battles, paperwork, just to punish me for leaving. My freedom felt 7 months away. Wednesday morning, I woke up in knots. I had to face him in court today. Morgan drove me, explaining how the judge would review the temporary restraining order. She said his attorney would oppose it, and I might have to testify. The courthouse was an intimidating maze of ancient marble and echoing halls. We waited on a wooden bench. Then I saw him, walking down the hallway with his lawyer, Dylan. He wore a dark suit, looking calm, professional, like this was just a business meeting, not a hearing about abusing his wife. He looked at me, his expression neutral, almost worried, like he was the wronged one, like I was overreacting. A wave of doubt washed over me. Was the wine incident really that bad? Maybe I should have tried harder. Then I remembered the sting in my eyes, the public humiliation, the years of walking on eggshells. No, I wasn't overreacting. We sat at separate tables in the courtroom. The judge, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, took her seat. Dylan stood first. He said my husband was a devoted man who made one mistake in a stressful situation, provoked by my flirting. He implied I threw myself at someone. He said my husband only went to my sister's house to check on his wife who disappeared without explanation. Listening to him twist the narrative, make me the problem, made me sick. I gripped the edge of the table, my hands shaking, and focused on breathing. Morgan squeezed my arm under the table, a silent anchor. The judge read the police report from the night he showed up at my sister's. The officer described him as aggressive, threatening, refusing to leave. Morgan showed the photos of my wine-stained blouse. The judge carefully reviewed them. Then she looked at my husband over her reading glasses. He tried to respond, but she raised her hand, silencing him. She extended the restraining order for 7 months, 60 feet from me, my office, my sister's house. Immediate arrest and jail time if he violated it. She looked directly at him, her voice firm. Dylan objected, but the judge said, "Mr. Pierce, your client is a threat." The hearing ended in under 40 minutes. I left the courthouse, exhausted but relieved. Morgan reminded me this was just the beginning, but the law was protecting me. Approaching me would have consequences. That night, my sister's neighbor, Deb Mills, showed up with a casserole. She'd heard I was struggling. I expected judgment, probing questions, or suggestions to work harder on my marriage. Instead, she placed the casserole on the counter and offered to connect me with a friend who had rental properties. She smiled, told me she'd been divorced years ago and knew how hard it was. It was an unexpected, powerful kindness. She wrote a number on a piece of paper. Her friends. "Call him when you're ready," she said. Staring at that number after she left, the idea of my own apartment felt thrilling and terrifying. My sister went to bed, and I searched online. Everything affordable was near my old neighborhood or felt unsafe. The nice places were too expensive. I realized the brutal truth. My marriage had made me financially dependent. He'd always made the big financial decisions. I let him because it was easier than fighting. I found myself looking at tiny studios in sketchy areas, wondering if I could survive on ramen and rent. The search made me feel weak. Then an email notification. "We need to talk." From an unknown sender. It was him. A lengthy message about how I was destroying our marriage and wasting 5 years. He apologized for the wine incident, but then accused me of irritating him. He loved me unconditionally and couldn't understand my harming us. Then the insults. Selfish, cruel, making him look like a monster for getting a restraining order. He told me to resolve this at home if I loved him and asked me to call him for an adult conversation. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I called Morgan Hale and read her the email. She demanded I forward it immediately. "Using a fake email account to contact you is a violation of the restraining order," she said, her voice sharp. "This email shows the manipulation cycle I warned you about. Blame and accusations mixed with apologies and declarations of love. He's making you responsible for his actions." She told me to report it to the police and not respond. I did. Within hours, a detective called. They'd traced the email to his home IP address. Arrest for violation was imminent. I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. He broke the law, but I still felt responsible. The detective called back to say he'd been arrested at home and would be held for 2 nights before bail. That week, in therapy, I shared the email, the arrest, the guilt. Harper Quinn, my therapist, showed me how years of him blaming me for his actions had embedded that guilt deep inside. "Separate his decisions from your reactions," she said. "He broke the restraining order. Emailing you was his choice, his decision, not yours." The rest of the session focused on recognizing when I was taking responsibility for others' actions. The next week, Morgan Hale called. Divorce was in discovery. Bank statements, tax returns, pay stubs, assets, debts, everything. His lawyer, she said, had requested extensive documentation about my spending habits and work history going back 6 years. Another intimidation tactic, she explained, designed to overwhelm me. I spent the weekend folding bank statements and pay stubs, reviewing every single purchase, paycheck, bill. It was intrusive but necessary. Among the normal purchases, I found something else. $250 at an electronics store, $600 at a restaurant I'd never been to, $1,500 at an online retailer I didn't recognize. On 4 months of statements, he'd increased my monthly payments. I texted Morgan Hale photos. "Is this legal?" I asked. She called within 25 minutes. Meet me at the police station tomorrow morning. Your husband has committed identity theft and fraud. I felt sick. He'd charged $9,000 without my consent. Opening accounts in someone else's name, even a spouse, is a crime. And the credit card company would likely reverse the charges if we filed a police report. The next morning, in a small police station room, Morgan and I gave our statements. The detective made copies, warned me these cases could take months. That afternoon, Morgan helped me call the credit card company. The representative was sympathetic, promised an investigation. Don't pay the account during the dispute, she advised. My sister's phone rang while we cooked dinner. Her face changed. It's his parents, she whispered, covering the mouthpiece. I just shrugged. She nodded, then insisted to them that I didn't want to talk, that lawyers should handle everything. I could hear his mother's booming voice, talking about family and deals. My sister hung up, telling me all communication had to be legal. Are you okay? She asked. My hands shook when I nodded. For weeks, I browsed apartment listings every night. Too expensive, too far, too unsafe. Then Deb Mills stopped by again. Her friend, she said, owned rental properties in a quiet neighborhood, 35 minutes from work. You should call him. The next day, I explained my situation to Gordy Lane, the landlord. I was divorcing, needed a place fast. He was sympathetic, offered to help with the security deposit, understanding the legal fees. He had a 2-bedroom available immediately. That weekend, I drove to the apartment. Small but clean. Good locks. Windows overlooking a quiet street. The kitchen was outdated but functional. The bedroom fit my bed and dresser. Gordy mentioned most of his tenants were single professionals or transitioning. I was grateful he asked few questions about my divorce. 2 days later, the lease was signed. 3 months after leaving my husband, I moved in. My sister helped me load my 3 suitcases and some new purchases into her car. We carried everything up to the 3rd floor. It was mine, but it felt empty. For a housewarming gift, my sister had ordered a security camera system. We spent the rest of the day installing cameras, checking locks on the doors and windows. By evening, the apartment felt secure. My sister hugged me goodbye, telling me to call if I needed anything. That first night alone, I barely slept. Every hallway creak, every street sound made me bolt upright, checking my phone's camera feed. I got up 5 times to double-check the locks. I finally fell asleep at 3:30 a.m., waking up exhausted. In therapy that week, Harper Quinn explained, trauma causes fear. My brain was still on high alert, protecting me. Time and safe practice will help, she assured me. Work was my only distraction. One afternoon, Miles Carter, my boss, called me into his office. I braced myself, expecting a new project. Instead, he motioned me to a chair. He'd been watching my work since I returned, he said, and seen unexpected growth. Most people going through what I was would have slowed down, but mine had improved. He offered me a senior analyst position, a 25% raise, leadership over the team's biggest clients. I just sat there, waiting for the catch, the punishment, that you're asking for too much. I asked for time to think, and then I accepted. He smiled, told HR to process it. The promotion started next month. Back at my desk, I felt a flicker of hope. I could make something good from the rubble. For months after I left, Morgan Hale scheduled divorce mediation. Logan Wires, a court mediator, would help us divide property before trial. Morgan and I sat at a long table in a courthouse conference room. My husband and Dylan arrived 10 minutes later. He looked at me across the table, his face etched with a fake hurt, as if I had wronged him. I felt a familiar pang of guilt, but Morgan squeezed my hand under the table, a silent reminder of why I was there. Logan explained mediation, urging us to focus on practical issues, not emotions. For the first hour, we discussed minor details, agreeing quickly on most. My car, my belongings, his tools, his sports gear. We'd divide wedding gifts by donor. Then we got to the house and car. He demanded I sign over all my rights, claiming he'd paid more of the mortgage, that the house was close to his work. 5 years of marriage, and I wanted a fair share of our equity. Morgan presented proof of my contributions. We debated for 2 hours, getting nowhere. After 4 hours, the minor issues were settled, the major ones weren't. Logan said some cases just couldn't be resolved through mediation. Morgan walked me to my car, warning me that trial would take months, cost thousands. I understood, but I wouldn't give up my legal rights just because he wanted his way. The next week, Harper Quinn mentioned a domestic violence survivors support group, Thursday nights at a community center. I was terrified, but she said hearing other women's stories would make me feel less alone. I sat in a circle of folding chairs, 7 women ranging from their 20s to 60s. One woman shared her story. Her ex-husband had violated his restraining order 7 times before finally leaving her alone. It scared me, but it also prepared me. He visited her workplace, her gym, her regular spots. The police told him to leave, but he was in public, so they couldn't arrest him. After 7 violations and 7 police reports, the judge sentenced him to a week in jail. The other women nodded, familiar with these tactics. My husband could do the same thing. The thought hadn't crossed my mind until then. I'd been so focused on the legal process, I hadn't considered the possibility of him just showing up. Driving home, I checked my mirrors more often. Every car behind me felt suspicious. I took 3 extra turns, just to be sure. The next morning, I went to the grocery store near my apartment, comparing apple prices in the produce section, and then he appeared, staring at me from the bread aisle, motionless, silent, a shopping basket in his hand. I dropped the apple, my hand shaking. It rolled to his feet. I didn't pick it up. I turned my cart and rushed to check out. My heart was pounding. He hadn't broken the restraining order. He could shop at any public store, but he lived 35 minutes away. There were 4 closer to his house. He chose this one because I would be there. 3 days later, I walked into the coffee shop I'd been going to for 6 weeks. And there he was, sitting at a window table, holding a newspaper. He looked up when I entered. Our eyes met briefly and I turned and left. 15 minutes later, I arrived at work, late and uncaffeinated, from a different coffee shop across town. Calling Morgan Hale that afternoon, I explained. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "No photos, no videos. Nothing concrete." She told me to record everything. Take photos of him whenever I saw him. Date, time, place. Build a pattern. 4 days later, we met again at the coffee shop. This time I was ready. I took a picture with my phone before leaving. He watched me but did nothing, just resumed reading his newspaper. Over the next 3 weeks, I saw him 7 more times. Never far from my home or work. Always legal, but always feeling dangerous. Each time, I photographed him and recorded the details. Morgan Hale filed to modify the restraining order. We heard from the judge who issued the original order. Dylan argued my husband had a right to shop and drink coffee in public. He said I was paranoid, trying to control my husband's movements. But the judge looked at my paperwork. 10 sightings in 3 weeks, all near my home and office, despite him living and working elsewhere. She asked Dylan why his client needed to shop 35 minutes away when he had several options nearby. Dylan argued it was a free country. The judge was not convinced. She added these locations to the restraining order, and she warned my husband, "If you continue to appear in places Ms. my name frequents, whether public or private, I will consider it harassment." After the hearing, I felt safer, yes, but also more alone. Returning to my usual grocery store or coffee shop risked another violation. I had to give up my small sense of normalcy to find new routines. That week, Sam Reed, a coworker, invited me to her book club. They met every other Thursday at a member's house, reading a mystery. Instinctively, I wanted to say no. Socializing, sitting with strangers, it felt exhausting. But then I realized my life had become legal battles, therapy, constant surveillance. Maybe an evening with normal people, doing normal things would help. Yes, I said. Sam smiled, promised to text me the address. The house was in an unfamiliar neighborhood. I brought the book I hadn't finished and a bottle of wine. Sam introduced me to the other women, 7 of them, from their late 20s to early 50s. They were welcoming. No one asked why I was there. We talked about the book for 90 minutes. I didn't finish it, but I followed the conversation. Then the topic shifted. College applications, promotions at work, regular things. Nothing about restraining orders or abusive husbands. One woman mentioned a difficult divorce years ago. She didn't say much, but it was one of the hardest things she'd ever done, and she came out stronger. She looked at me, not with pity, but with hope. Driving home that night, I felt better than I had in months. Being around people who treated me like a person, not a victim or a case, reminded me that life could eventually return to normal. For months after leaving, I met someone at a coffee shop on the other side of town. He was behind me in line. We chatted about the weather, the line. He asked if I came here often. I said I had just started a few weeks ago. He'd been coming for years, he said, and recommended the breakfast sandwiches. After a while, he asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. My initial reaction was panic, but he seemed nice, normal. It had been so long since anyone had shown interest. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. We met the following Saturday. Just coffee and conversation in a public place. He talked about his accounting job, his dog, building model trains. I told him about my job, but kept everything else vague. I was anxious the entire time. My eyes darted to the door. Every time someone walked in, I tensed, expecting to see my husband. I couldn't focus on what he was saying. Too busy scanning the room, plotting escape routes. After about 90 minutes, I made my excuses. Errands to run, I said. He seemed disappointed. Said he'd like to see me again. Maybe, I said, knowing I wouldn't. In my next therapy session, I told Harper Quinn about the date. She asked how I felt. I admitted I was too anxious to enjoy anything. Perfectly normal, she said. It's probably too soon. I needed to focus on healing, on rebuilding my sense of self, before I could be ready for someone new. Part of me felt relieved, like I had permission to be unprepared, permission not to rush. Healing wasn't linear, she explained. Don't rush through it just because you think you should be over it by now. 7 months after filing for divorce, Morgan Hale called. The trial date was set. For weeks away, we'd go to court to resolve the remaining issues, the house, the car. We met 3 times in her office to prepare. She'd ask me practice questions, preparing me for Dylan's cross-examination. He'd try to make me look bad, she warned. Twist my words, make me seem like the problem. Stay calm, she drilled into me. Stick to the facts. She pressed me on the wine incident, on the years leading up to it, challenging my responses, just like Dylan would. By the 3rd session, I felt more confident, but still terrified of facing him again. A week before the trial, flowers arrived at my workplace. The delivery person brought them right to my desk. I stared at the bouquet, my stomach churning. I knew it was from him. Sam Reed walked by, saw the flowers. Everything okay? She asked. My hand started shaking again. I opened the card. I forgive you, it read. I want to start over. We can make things right if you just come home. I need to refuse this, I told Sam. She helped me return them to the front desk. I called the police, filing a report for violating the restraining order. The officer said sending flowers was a clear violation. A warrant would be issued. My husband was arrested. That evening, 4 days in jail before his bail hearing. Dylan argued his client was just a man trying to save his marriage, that flowers were a romantic gesture, not a threat. The judge looked at Dylan like he was insane. She pointed out the multiple violations. She extended the restraining order for another full year, increased his bail. She told him, point blank, that if he violated it again, He'd face significantly more jail time. Watching him being led back to the holding cell, I felt satisfied. Relieved he was finally facing consequences, but scared. Scared of what he'd do now that he knew I wasn't backing down. The trial took place on a cold winter morning. I woke up at 4:45 a.m., unable to sleep. I sat by the window watching the sun rise. My hand still trembled as I held my coffee cup. I dressed in the simple navy dress Morgan had helped me pick out. Not too fancy, not too casual. My sister picked me up at 7:30. We drove in silence. She kept glancing over, wanting to say something encouraging, but couldn't find the words. Morgan met us outside the courtroom, going over everything one last time. Look at the judge. Take your time. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, mostly empty. My husband sat at the other table with Dylan. He wore a suit I'd never seen, his hair cut shorter. He looked like a different person. Calm, reasonable, someone who would never throw wine in anyone's face. The judge, an older woman with gray hair and a bun, entered. We all stood. She went through the preliminary stuff. Then Morgan Hale called me to the witness stand. I walked up, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. My voice, surprisingly, came out steady. Morgan started with easy questions. Marriage length, where we lived. Then she asked me to describe the party. The chip bowl, the wine hitting my face, stinging my eyes. His words. That's what she gets for looking at other men. Everyone watching. No one doing anything. Dylan objected twice, but the judge overruled him. Morgan asked about the years before the party. I described the silent treatments, the phone checking, the accusations about my clothes. How he'd made me apologize for laughing, showing up at my work unannounced. Dylan objected again, calling it irrelevant. The judge cut him off. Pattern of behavior is relevant. Morgan asked about the financial abuse, the credit card, the $9,000 in charges I never made, how he controlled our money. Dylan stood up again, called it normal marital financial management. The judge told him to wait his turn. Morgan asked about what happened after I left. The calls, the texts, his appearance at my sister's, the fake email, the flowers. Dylan tried to object again. The judge cut him off. I'll hear your side when it's your turn, Mr. Pierce. When Morgan finished, Dylan stood for cross-examination. Have you ever been diagnosed with any mental health conditions? Morgan objected. Sustained. Were you faithful during the marriage? Yes. Did you ever lie to your husband about where you were going? No. Do you think it's normal for a wife to run away without warning and take half the money? I didn't run away. I left an unsafe situation. Do you have any proof the wine incident happened? Dozens of witnesses. Did any come forward? No, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. He kept pushing, trying to make me sound vindictive, unstable. But I stayed calm, stuck to the facts, just like Morgan taught me. When he finally sat down, I was exhausted, but relieved. The judge called a recess. My sister hugged me in the hallway. You did great, she whispered. Anyone watching could see you were telling the truth. Back in the courtroom, Morgan called my sister. She described me showing up at her door, wine in my hair, scared. Him pounding on her door at 1 a.m. shouting. Dylan tried to paint her as biased, but she remained calm, factual. Then Morgan called Sam Reed from work. Sam testified about him showing up uninvited, standing too close, calling multiple times a day. My baggy clothes. The judge took notes, asked her own questions. Then Dylan called my husband. He walked to the stand, looking sad, defeated. He talked about how much he loved me, how he'd made mistakes, but I was blowing everything out of proportion. The wine was a one-time loss of control after I'd been flirting all evening. Checking my phone was normal worry. Showing up at my sister's was just checking if I was safe. His performance was good. Too good. I started to worry the judge might actually believe him. Then Morgan Hale stood up. The credit card, she asked. He said he opened it for household expenses, that I knew about it. Morgan pulled out bank statements, charges for bars, restaurants I'd never been to. He couldn't remember every purchase. Why use her name and social security number without asking? It was easier. Do you think that's legal? He started getting frustrated. The restraining order violations. Sending flowers isn't a crime. Did you read the order that specifically said no contact of any kind? The order was ridiculous. Do you think you're above the law? His voice rose. She's turned everyone against me. She made me look like a monster when all I did was love her too much. The judge told him to lower his voice. Is throwing wine in someone's face how you show love? Morgan asked. He slammed his hand on the witness stand. She pushed me to it. The judge had heard enough. She excused him. He walked back to his table, breathing hard, Dylan looking like he wanted to disappear. The judge said she'd take 10 days to issue her ruling. We filed out. My husband tried to make eye contact. I looked straight ahead. Morgan said she thought it went well. His outburst, she said, probably helped our case more than anything. 10 days later, Morgan Hale called. The ruling was in. The judge granted the divorce, awarded me half the equity in the house, which he had to refinance to buy out my share. He was assigned responsibility for the fraudulent credit card debt. I kept my car and my grandmother's jewelry, which he'd been refusing to return. The judge's written decision included language about recognizing a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior. Reading those words felt like a powerful confirmation. What I'd been through was real and serious. He had 75 days to refinance and pay me out. Morgan warned he might drag it out, hide assets. But the court order gave us enforcement options. 7 months after leaving, a check arrived. $45,000 from the home refinance. I sat in my apartment holding that check and I cried, relieved. I could finally breathe. It was enough to start a proper emergency fund, to feel financially secure for the first time since I left. I paid off my legal bills, made a down payment on a dependable used car, bought real furniture for my apartment, replacing the second-hand items. Having my own things in my own space felt like reclaiming my identity. My husband made one last attempt at contact through a mutual friend, asking if we could discuss reconciliation. I told the friend I had nothing to say, that she should respect my boundaries. The friend suggested I give him another chance. He seemed really broken up about everything. I said no, and hung up. In therapy, I told Harper Quinn about it. She asked how I felt. Mostly angry, I said. That he thought he could still manipulate me through others. She said my response was healthy. It showed my progress. My trauma symptoms were improving. We cut therapy back to once a week. Some bad days, the hypervigilance returned. I'd check my locks 5 times before bed. I still had nightmares about wine dripping on my face in public. But there were strong days, too. Capable days. Free days. 9 months after I left, Miles Carter called me into his office. I expected another project. Instead, he motioned me to the chair, closed the door. He'd been closely monitoring my work, he said, and saw unexpected growth. Most people going through what I was would have slowed down, but mine had improved. He offered me a senior analyst position, a 25% raise, leadership over the team's biggest clients. I just sat there, still expecting the catch, the punishment for taking up space. I asked for time to think. Then I accepted. He smiled, told HR to drop the paperwork. The promotion started next month. Back at my desk, I felt like I could finally build something good from the rubble. That night, at the support group, I announced the promotion. The women applauded. Some asked if I would mentor a new member, someone who had left her husband 3 weeks earlier, caught in the same shame spiral I'd been in for months. I said yes, without thinking, assisting someone else through what I'd been through. It felt like giving meaning to all my pain. Her name was Lauren Brooks. She looked lost, a mirror of me 8 months ago. After the meeting, I gave her my number. Text me anytime, I said, if you need to talk, or just need reassurance that you're not crazy. I met Lauren for coffee twice in the following weeks, helping her separate finances, find a lawyer. Hearing her story made me realize how far I'd come. What had seemed impossible just 9 months ago was now basic survival. My week started to revolve around the support group, a place where I could talk about my tough days without judgment, without being told to just move on. 10 months after leaving, I was making dinner in my apartment, and I realized I hadn't thought about my ex-husband in 9 days. I hadn't obsessively checked locks, or looked over my shoulder in parking lots, or planned what to say if he showed up. My constant hypervigilance was fading, without me even noticing. I stood at my kitchen counter, crying into a cutting board full of chopped vegetables, because the absence of fear was almost as overwhelming as the fear itself. My confidence in my own judgment was returning. I truly believed, that looking at someone did not invite punishment. I had a good job I worked hard for, a safe apartment that was truly mine, friends who understood, who supported me. I was learning to spot red flags, to set healthy boundaries, to know that true love doesn't shrink you. I still carried the weight of what happened, the echoes in my body's reactions, the cautious way I moved through the world. But I survived something I didn't think I could, and that meant more than I ever knew. I was proud of the woman I was becoming, someone who saw strength in herself, not shame. Have you ever experienced a moment where something seemingly small became the clear turning point to leave a toxic situation? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.